Moving on to a new concept, a section that we're going to be introducing for the new season called the Super Eagles Index. Now, the whole idea about this index is to mention what players are hot and what players are not hot at the moment. Now, the reason for this, as I said, we've got a World Cup qualifier taking place in literally just over 2 weeks. Camp for Nigeria opens in 2 weeks' time. We have 4 World Cup qualifiers to prosecute over the next 2 months. So by this time in October, we'll know whether the Super Eagles have made it to the World Cup or not. As if that's not enough, we also have AFCON starting from December 24th, where Nigeria will be playing against Uganda, Tanzania, and Tunisia. So all is in play, guys. Everything is in play when it comes to the Super Eagles. So we have to be monitoring how well our players are performing, both the good and the bad. So we're going to be doing this index, who's hot and who's not, or we can say who's hot and who's cold. So starting with who's hot, I've already spent 5 minutes praising him today. Christantus Uche, I mean, my word. What I also like about Christantus Uche is I think in the national team, we don't have many players with the same type of profile Christantus Uche has. Now, physically, he's a specimen of a human being. Very fast, very big, very strong. But we know that that's not what gets you into these positions. Technically, this is a player that can play as a striker. He can play as a second striker. He can play as a cam. He can play as a central midfielder. He can even play on the wing and play to a decent level. For his club, he plays very direct football and he's been given the keys of their attack, which is clear to see. Mind you, before last season, he'd never really played in the top 5 league in his career and managed to still crash 15 goals plus assists contributed for a Getafe team that finished 13th. This is a player that is absolutely destined for the top. He is going to come to the Premier League whether anybody likes or not. In fact, I think this year, depending on how things go with Getafe and Nigeria, if we make the World Cup, for example, on AFCON, and this guy can show his talent at AFCON and the World Cup, Getafe know that they're getting a big bag after the World Cup. Yes, we know it's unlikely Nigeria will make the World Cup, but even if we don't make the World Cup, I really think he's got one more season in La Liga, especially playing for Getafe. Or let me say for Getafe, because he could move to Atletico Madrid, one of the bigger or better teams in the league, so to speak. But let me tell you guys something. Christantus Uche, already game week 1, goal and assist. He's as hot as anybody can be. If you even take into account the last 2-3 games for the Super Eagles, he played well against Russia, scored the winning penalty against Jamaica, and he's definitely here to stay. So right now, I could definitely see Christantus Uche getting called up for the World Cup qualifiers. In fact, I would even start him right now, especially when you look at the fact that the Lookmans of the world are having issues with their clubs. Fisara Delibashu is not necessarily starting for his club yet, and we're still not sure where Iwobi will play for the Super Eagles. So Christantus Uche, in my opinion, is the hottest right now on that index. Second hottest and one of the mainstays of the Nigeria team. For this week, I have to praise Ola Aina. Ola Aina, we know how incredible of a season he had last season was. He could have been in the team of the year for the Premier League, if not for the final 2-3 months, because he was even injured for the last few games of the season. Ola Aina is the guaranteed bona fide starting right back for the Super Eagles. Bona fide starting right back for Nottingham Forest. They started the season beating Brentford 3-1. The goal they conceded was even a penalty by Brentford. So their defense looks just as sharp as last season. They didn't lose anyone in their back line. Matt Sells is still there. Murillo is still there. Milenkovic is still there. Neko Williams is still there at left back. And Ola Aina just acted like there wasn't even a summer. Straight back to business. Nottingham Forest looks so good, man. And their starting fixtures for the first 6 games are really quality. So we just may see them push yet again for the top 6. We even thought they could make the Champions League. But the point here is Ola Aina had yet another good game and he will be in the team no matter what. But I love when a player comes and shows workings yet again in the new season. So I think Ola Aina is one of the hotter people on the index right now. Now, this one is all about context. I think another player who I would consider hot on the index is Frank Onyeka. Now, Frank Onyeka, you'll all remember from the last AFCON, was one of the best players for Nigeria. Him and he will be in the middle of the park. Remember, indeed, he was injured, so he didn't play in AFCON. Frank Onyeka had a superb AFCON. He was still at Brentford at that time, but we know last season he fell out of favour with Thomas Frank, so he got loaned out to Aalborg in Germany, where he played all their games, was a mainstay, especially when they had such a good defence. Now, this season, we were unsure where he's going to play or what's going to happen with Frank Onyeka. But on a positive note, the reason why I'm adding him to the hot index is we saw him come off the bench yesterday for Brentford and actually play at least 20 minutes for Brentford in their 3-1 loss to Nottingham Forest. Now, when you think about our central midfield options and the depth of options we've got, Frank Onyeka is still a very important player for the national team, whether we like it or not. Yes, we want a few other people to come and declare for Nigeria, whether it's Ugochukwu or other centre mids around, but we have to work with what we've got. I would say Onyeka and Ndidi are still my starting pair, but there's moments where if Onyeka plays, nobody complains, you know. So we have to look at these things well. So it's really a good sign. And the more Nigerian players we have playing in the Premier League, the better. Brentford treated us so well when we went to watch the Ghana and Jamaica games this year. So they're a team that I'm happy they have a Nigerian player and the fact that he played. Although it must be said that Brentford are really going to struggle this season unless they make some real quality signings. They've signed Dango Ouattara from Bournemouth. Let's see if Ouattara can emulate his fellow Africans, Wissa and Mbeumo, by getting close to 20 league goals in the season. And I think he has potential. Now, for fun fact trivia, Dango Ouattara was a player who played in the same Lorient team as Terem Murphy and Enzo Lefi, who plays at Sunderland. They were like the top three, along with Armand Lorient, who went to Sassuolo. The whole reason why I bring this up is remember when Terem Murphy was first hot, scoring 15 goals in Ligue 1. Ouattara is one of those players that almost matched his total. So there's a player in Ouattara that can literally almost explode, is what I'm trying to say. So let's see what happens with the boys at Brentford. And finally, for me, another player to just add onto the hot index, simply because of the depth of options we have at left back. Zaidu Sanusi played a league game for Porto last week. You heard me correctly. Zaidu Sanusi played a game for Porto last week. I don't think we can overdo how important this is that Zaidu Sanusi played a game. Let me tell you, Zaidu Sanusi has been a player that has been struggling for fitness to even feel like a footballer yet again. And you can't even imagine what that feels like for a player, honestly. But the good news is after his long injury absences, he did play. How many minutes did he even play? So I know the exact. 35 minutes for Porto last week as they beat Vitória Guimarães 3-0 on Monday. Now, the next game, Porto, they will play in the league tonight against Gil Vicente, who just got promoted. And I'm very keen to see whether Sanusi gets some more minutes today. Now, if he does, that's a good sign because, yes, we have Felix Agu and we have Bruno Yemachi. But I think the more competition we have in these places, the better for us. You know, you could even argue that if Sanusi does well, between Sanusi and Yemachi and Agu, we have more options are left back than even right back with Ola Aina and Brett Osai Samuel. Charnebui is playing in Serie B, so as far as I'm concerned, he's not going to be looked at for the main time. But I just wanted to call that out for another really good performance, mainly in terms of hot index and making the squad. It's a good sign for Zaidu Sanusi. Now, who did it not look good for? First of all, I'll say Lookman because we're still not sure what's going to happen with his club football. We know that he's an automatic pick and starter for the national team, but you have to still be fit as a player to play football games. So if you're not training and you're not playing competitive games, that is obviously going to count against you. Now, the good news is Moses Simon played for Paris FC, so it's not as if we're exactly super desperate on the left wing, but we of course know what Lookman brings to the table when it comes to Nigeria, especially when it comes to scoring decisive goals. And Chukwueze has started on the bench yet again, so it's a tough one in that front. But let's see what happens with Ademola Lookman. Now, another person, as I just said, Chukwueze, I think we have to say he's not hot at the moment. Now, the reason for saying this is AC Milan played against Bari in the Coppa Italia yesterday. Was it on Saturday night, and they beat Bari 2-0, courtesy of a goal by Rafael Leao, good header, and Christian Pulisic, 2-0. Now, Samuel Chukwueze did not even get a single minute off the bench in a Coppa Italia game against a Serie B team like Bari. Now, I don't know about you guys, but that's not a good sign. To not even get 10 minutes, that's a problem. So it looks like we may see some similar problems for Chukwueze that he had last season, but look, there's still time for things to change. It's only been one game week. But of course, he can't be hot on the index based on that. Another person who did not see any minutes for his club side this weekend, despite the expectations we have for him, Victor Boniface. Victor Boniface saw his Leverkusen team go and play in the DFB Pokal. For you to play a third division team, and we saw Nathan Tella start, we saw Patrick Schick start and even score. Now, Boniface was an unused sub in this game, and I think that's what worries me the most. Ten Hag's first competitive game, they won the game 4-0. We saw Nathan Teller start the game as a left wing back, which is quite interesting. But Boniface, I love to see him doing his content in terms of podcasts and all this. But Boniface needs to remember his primary job in this life right now is to be a football player. That is literally your job, Victor Boniface. So when you're not getting any minutes, I don't know about you guys, but that's not exactly a good sign. You know, we need Victor Boniface playing games. If Victor Boniface is not playing games, it's not a good sign. You know, it's becoming more of a problem is basically the point I'm trying to make with Boniface. Because if he's not even getting minutes in a DFB Pokal game, that's not a good sign. Patrick Stick continues to score, continues to lead the line, and we're not really sure where that puts Boniface at the moment. So if he wants to play in the World Cup rather than complain that he's going to leave Super Eagles when he has not scored any goal in 13 caps, he better fix up, look sharp. What's Dizzy Rascal? Because it's not looking good, bruv. I'm telling you. And then finally, Tolu Arokodare is another person to just watch who's slightly going cold at the moment. Now, the Belgian League has been going for the past 3 weeks. He's been called up for the past Super Eagles games, and of course, he scored in our last Super Eagles game against Russia. It was his first goal for the national team. But even though he was the top goal scorer in Belgium, this season so far, he's been on the bench for every single game for Genk. Now, to be fair to him, he did score in one of these games off the bench, which they still lost. But it's not looking as good as last season started. I'm not really sure why the coach is not starting him. I mean, if he was top goal scorer, then who the hell can be starting ahead of him? But right now, so far, it looks like Genk are just struggling slightly in terms of, you know, their start to the season. They've also got Europa League qualifiers to play. So maybe that's affecting their preparation and just their ability to juggle, you know, two competitions, especially these kind of teams that are not Club Brugge, who are used to playing in double leagues or Union Saint-Gilloise, for example. So that's one to monitor, but let's see if he can force his way back into the starting lineup and play pretty good minutes for his club. So that's it in terms of Super Eagles Index. Please let me know what you think about the new feature. Any players that you think that we're not looking at who should be part of the index, or someone who you think has performed really poorly, please let me know in the comments. Let me know who your favorite Nigerian player performance was over the weekend as well.